On January 25th, 1998, American tourists Tom and Eileen Lonergan boarded a boat in Queensland, Australia. The married couple was from Louisiana. Tom was 34 and Eileen was 28. They had spent the last 2 years in Fiji and Tuvalu serving in the Peace Corps. Australia was just a pit stop on their way back home. They both were avid scuba divers and they wanted a chance to dive on the world's largest coral reef system, the Great Barrier Reef. Once Tom, Eileen, and the other 24 tourists had boarded this boat, the captain did a head count, and then once he had everyone, he turned the boat around and headed out to sea. After traveling 25 miles, the captain stopped the boat and then told the group to put on their dive gear. So Tom, Eileen, and the others happily put on their fins and their masks and their tanks, and then when they were ready, they were inspected and then allowed to jump into the coral sea. Less than an hour later, the divers came back up to the surface and the captain began pulling them back into the boat. Once everyone was back on board the boat, the captain did another head count just to confirm he had everyone, and once he was sure he did, he turned the boat around and he headed back to shore. Except the captain miscounted and neither he nor anyone else noticed. Shortly after the boat had left the area, Tom and Eileen Lonergan came up from their dive and looked around and realized they had been abandoned. After the initial panic wore off, they probably told each other that don't worry, as soon as that boat gets back to shore, they will find inside the boat our wallets and passports and other personal items, and they'll know we aren't with them and they'll come out and get us. And so most likely the couple was fairly optimistic as they just treaded water waiting for someone to show up any minute. Except they didn't show up any minute. It took 48 hours before anybody showed up because that's how long it took before someone saw their wallets and passports and personal items were still inside that dive boat. And in those 48 hours, Tom and Eileen were exposed to intense summer heat, no fresh water, and sharks. When their personal effects were finally found, a huge search was launched for them, but there was no sign of them. A month later, a female wetsuit washed up on the shores of Australia, and it was the same size as Eileen's, and an expert analyzed it and said it had been floating in the water for about a month. So that lined up with when Tom and Eileen went missing. 5 months later, more diving equipment washed up on the shores of Australia. Among those items were life jackets with the Lonergan name stenciled on the back of them, as well as an air tank and a dive fin that belonged to Eileen. But the most disturbing thing that washed up on shore was the couple's diver's slate. A diver's slate is like a dry erase board that works underwater. On this slate was the Lonergans' final message. It said, "To anyone who can help us, we've been abandoned on Agincourt Reef. Please help us before we die. Please help." Above the message was a date. It was January 26th, 1998. So that would have been one day after they were abandoned at sea. So we know the couple was alive for at least 24 hours. But beyond that, no one knows what happened. Some say the pair staged their disappearance so they could start a new life somewhere, or so they could take their own lives. Others say they were devoured by sharks.